My dear Dharma friends and all practitioners, today is a Saturday, the 28th of February 2026. We are coming back to the weekend and have the discussions of our practice, sharing our experience in practice with the topic. I just heard the news that Pháp Tu, Nun Pháp Tu passing away, and she was a patriarch Zen in the patriarch Zens, and we just heard that news. She just had a cremations today, and based on that news, I want to remind everybody a topic that the circle of birth and death is the great goal that we have to know. We need to solve this circle of birth and death. We don't know when we're gonna die. Before we facing with death, we need to know and solve that circle of birth and death. And that is a topic for this week. The Buddha is always remind us that the circle of birth and death is the great goal for us to solve. Our patriarchs also remind us about this. As Dr. Zen Master, when he saw all practitioners practice and enter the door of practicing, he only himself is still not entering that door of practicing. So he's always remind him by going back to the practice. He had a poem that all my friends had entered the door of emptiness, but me is still here, doing nothing and cannot have any progress. So he asked his parents to go to the temples and start to practice. And he make a vow, if he cannot enter that door of emptiness, he won't be back to see his parents. So based on the Nun Pháp Tu passing away, that is the reminder for us about the circle of birth and death. In our practice, we had a lot of challenges. Our ignorance, all the conditions outside, all the condition inside, always interfered and challenged with our practice. However, the nun still have a time to make a vow to practice the patriarch Zen to liberate her mind from all these thinkings. And because of that vow, because of that right view, she started the practice in the patriarch Zen. And based on her study, she's been through a lot of challenges from outside condition to inside conditions. And these are always interfere with her practice. Sometimes she felt like her practice is progressing, sometimes it's not progressing. However, the vows is always there. Our karma is always there and interfere with our practice. Sometimes it wins, sometimes it's not. Just like we still having a dream in this sleeping open eye sleepings. That's why we need to practice. So the nun Pháp tử facing with the old age and enter the practicing, the Buddha and the patriarch always remind us about the circle of birth and death. The impermanence of life is always there. We need to go back to the practice, consolidate our believe in our own Buddha nature and continue to practice until we see our old Buddha nature and until we get enlightenment. So even if our practice is not going toward the goal yet, but we already plant a seed of the right Dharma, and in the next life, when we listen to the right Dharma, we had the reminder for us to go back to our original vow and continue to practice. This is why the wise men, our masters, always told us when we already plant a seed of the right Dharma in our mind, even the old age there, the dizziness is what we're facing. Our practice can be a difficulty. However, when we already plant that seed, even the old age is there, the diseases are there to challenge us. We always have that vows, the original vows of practice to remind us in all lives in the future. It's better than people who don't believe in the cause and effect, the one that don't know about the right Dharma from the Buddha, and that is so pity for them. So for us, we always have the help from our master, from our wise men, and our friends, Dharma friends. We need to go back to our practice and keep that vows of practice and do the actions. Sometimes the karma is always there to interfere with our practice. However, because we have the help from our Dharma friends, we can go back to our practice. And that is a help that will help, what will encourage us to continue with our practice. That remind us to believe in our Buddha nature, remind us to do the practice continuously, diligently. We don't ask for any forms of practice. we don't attach ourselves even to the no forms. Our patriots is always remind us when we have a practitioner passing away, like Dharma friends in when Dulux Zen Master had a Dharma friend pass away, he came to her ceremony and her funeral to remind everybody to go back to the practice and give everybody a Dharma talk. If we said that we don't attach ourselves to forms or formless, when we go to a funeral like that, which means we already attach ourselves to forms. However, in fact, that is the ways or the means that our master used to remind everybody about the impermanent life. So for all practitioners, all sentient beings are equal. We all have one duty, one responsibility, is to realize our own Buddha nature. We don't differentiate one from another. If we have a great practice and we can affect other people to practice too. When our life is out, mind is always showing the practice toward the Buddha nature, that will affect all people surrounding us and all practitioners to go back to the practice. Even the one have not practiced, they will make a vow to practice. And that is the right directions that we're practicing to detach ourselves from everything. And all these are just explanations, and they have no meanings at all if we don't practice. The main point here is to detach yourself from all those knowledge, all those understanding, but doesn't mean that we don't use those as a reminder to go back to our practice. We are always busy in this life, busy with the work, busy with everything from outside. However, we always go back to the practice, no matter the attachment is still there or the dualistic aspect of mind is still there. We still going on that practicing, no matter if we go in the prison cannot prevent us from those practicing. When we live outside or inside the prison, the ignorance is always there to interfere with us. But if all practitioners realize that the belief in Buddha nature and always go back to the practice, then that is the right practice, the right path that we are going on. We always detach ourselves from all those objectives happening in our practice, and we enter the stream of practicing, and that is the reminder for everybody to go back to the practice this week. So Pháp Tuệ, go ahead, have your questions. Through your Dharma talk and your reminder, I feel that I need to put in more efforts in my practice. When you said about in control of the circle of birth and death, as Tĩnh Hải asking you about how to keep the practice continuously when the disease or the illnesses are there to interfere with our practice. Recently, I heard that you remind us to go back to the mind and need to focus on the mind in our practice. I realize this is very important. We need to go back to the mind, the desirement, the greedy and elusive minds. When we're facing with this mind and we're facing with our daily activities, our desires always there. The greedies, the angriness is always there. When we're facing with everything going on outside, the greedy mind is easy to deal with, but the angriness is always there and it's hard to deal with. That's why when I'm facing with anything going on outside, I remember your words that you need to overcome your own elusive mind, and I go back to the practice. And today, when I heard the news of the nuns Pháp Tu passing away, I heard. I've been knowing her for a while, and I knew that her age is not the time for her to go yet, but the impermanence is always there to wait for us. So could you give us some more encouragement for us to go back to the practice? So when you believe in your own Buddha nature, you need to realize your mistake and you go back to the practice. It is not good if you don't realize your own mistake and don't realize that you have that angriness and you cannot put that down. When you're still running after the elusive thinking and you not realize that, you don't realize that, and that is a pity of you. But if you can realize that is a mistake that you are in, that's a reminder for you to go back to the practice. And when you start your practice, all the thinking disappear. When we say that we realize that all these elusive thinkings disappears, which means we already realize that is a reminder for us to go back to the practice. The Buddha said that when you see the elusive thinking of the mind, we need to let it go. There's no means that can use right here. But when you realize the elusive thinking, you see your own Buddha nature, and that also there's no levels for us to attach to. So when we're running after the forms, we're running after the dualistic aspect of mind. When we said that we don't attach ourselves to anything, we already attach ourselves to that not attachment. And that is a problem too. This is why many practitioners in an old age, when they came up to our masters and complained to our master about all of these forms that we need to follow, and we laugh at other people who are not following the forms. So the master reminds us that when you enter any house, you have to follow the rules in that house. You need to follow all the precepts when you go into the temples. And that's a reminder for us to go back to our practice. But for some people, they don't understand about that. And they against all those words of our masters. They didn't realize that they already attached themselves to the no attachment, the no attachment. Those are just a means that our master used in order to help all those people that have not known about the patriarchs. And some people, when they practicing and they attach themselves to these means, and they thought that they are not attaching to anything. They are running after the words of explanations. They can explain everything very well. However, they are not doing what they explain about. They only talk the talk, but they cannot walk the walk. That's why they still attaching to words and understandings, but not the practice yet. This is why the Patriarch Zen practitioners need to realize that everything that we see, everything that we know are there still. However, we need to go back to our practice. If we don't go back to our practice, we still attaching ourselves to the words and the explanations. When you believe in the Buddha nature, anything that we're facing with, all the challenge that we facing are a reminder for us to go back to the practice. This is why the Buddha criticized Ananda that he's only listen to the Buddha's teachings, remember them, memorize all the Buddha's words. However, he didn't apply that into the practice. That's why the Buddha criticized him that you only listening to the Dharma, memorizing the Dharma, but never apply it into the practice for a day, and that's a waste of Dharma. So for us, when we realize everything is going outside of us, we realize this desired mind, the angriest mind, the elusive mind, always there. Those are the reminder for us to go back to the practice. We always have our Dharma friends there to remind us to go back to the practice. When you say that which one is the right one, something right now can be wrong in the future. We cannot attach ourselves to the righteousness or the wrongness. When we attach ourselves to these words of dualities, we need to practice in order to detach ourselves to these dualistic aspects of the mind. So when we know the way of practice, it's just like we know the map to go somewhere. We need to walk toward our goal by doing the practice. When we see anything happening, because we don't see all these karma from our previous life, but we see all the karma that we did this life, and those are the reminder for us to go deeply into our practice, believe in our own Buddha nature. Anything that we think that is right or wrong, those are the dualistic aspect of the mind. As the Buddha said, but the patriarchs remind us, in front of us are all the dangers, behind us are our enemies, on the left are the fire, on the right you have all these animals that can kill you anytime. So you cannot progress forward, backward, to the left or to the right. You cannot stay in one spot and do nothing. You need to practice in order to stay away from all the dangerous things happening surrounding. We need to go back to our practice. That's all we need to do. Don't look for anything else, but go back to the practice. When you're still looking for something, the more you're looking for, the more confusion you are. You cannot get rid of that. That's why we need to apply what we know, what we realize, and use them as a reminder to go back to our practice. In this life, we have enough sufferings, with enough misery. We don't just stay there and complain about the sufferings, the misery. We knew about the right Dharma. We just apply that Dharma back to the practice and detach ourselves to anything that we realize in this life of practice. Is that understandable? Yes. Thank you for your words. Kim Yến, go ahead. Based on the topics that you talk about, the impermanence of life, when we in health, we thought that our practice is pretty good. However, when we're facing with the disease, the illnesses, or facing with death, and then we losing our practice right way. Just like previously, when I had a sickness, I have all the pain, and I focus on my pain instead of focus on practice. And when I'm focused on my pain, I forget about asking questions and raising doubt. And that habit been having with me for a long time. And when I listen to your Dharma talk or Duy Lực Zen Master Dharma talk, when you practicing in health, you have 10 folds of practice. And when you're facing with illnesses, only 1 fold left. So when you have 10 folds of practice in your illnesses, but when you're facing death, only 1 fold left. So could you give us some more encouragement on this? So when we said that when we practicing in actions, we had 10 folds. When we facing with when we practicing 10 folds in the silence or the quietness, when we facing with the actions of the life outside, we had only 1 fold left. When we facing with health and practice as 10 folds, when we facing with illnesses, only 1 fold left. And when we had 10 folds in practicing during illnesses, but when we're facing with the death, only 1 fold left. And these are just the means that our master told us to do the practice consistently and diligently. When we're facing with all situations, we need to go back to our practice no matter what. Don't let the old age as an excuse for us to stop practicing. Don't let the illnesses as an excuse for us to stop practicing. And don't let the death as an excuse for us to stop our practice. As our patriarchs in an old age, when they saw death, they saw old age, they saw illnesses, they feel like that's happening to them right now, and they use that as a reminder to go back to their practice. And no matter what circumstances they're in, no situations that they're in, whatever that they are facing, they use them as a reminder for them to go back to the practice. Some people, when they are having the illnesses, they use that as an excuse to stop practicing and focus on their illnesses only. we need to have this practice, and we need to train ourselves to do the practice in all situations. It doesn't mean that we force ourselves to do the practice, but we realize that the practice is necessary for us to deal with everything that's happening in this life, and we do the practice. So asking questions and raising doubt, the doubt will sweep up everything for us automatically. We don't attach ourselves to the doubt. The doubt has nothing for us to attach to. When we have the doubt, everything will be swept up automatically. We don't need to put in our intentions that we need to have the doubt, or the doubt has to be there in order to practice. Just ask question and raising doubt, and when the doubt is there, everything is done. It's not like we learning math. We understand and know all the formulas in math, memorize all of them, and we don't know how to apply it to solve a math problem. So our practice is applications of what we learn into our practice life. We don't attach ourselves to anything. We don't attach ourselves to this assumptive mind. We don't attach ourselves to anything that we see, anything what we hear. But when we hear that, don't attach ourselves to what we see, what we hear. We attach ourselves to not attachment to what we hear, what we see, and that is still the attachment to the non-attachment. This is why we need to practice continuously. We need to continue to learn from our experienced ones and get back to our practice, apply what we learn. Anything that's happening in our life is because of our attachment. This is why we need to fix our own mistake. We don't look at other people's mistake. They have their own responsibility to deal with their own mistake. We have our own mistake to fix. We need to go back to ourselves only. There's nothing that can be a challenge for us when we believe in our own Buddha nature. Just go back to the practice, and that's all we're doing. Is that understandable? Yes, thank you for your words.